But another way to keep connected to your partner is through enjoying the outdoors together. Maybe both of you enjoy bike riding. Well, our next guest may have just the adventure for you. She is a Chicano studies professor at UCLA and enjoys cycling. Marissa Lopez developed a self-guided audio bike tour through 19th century Mexican LA. And along the way, she's hoping to right a few wrongs. She joins me now. And Marissa, thank you for taking the time to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
Before we get into the bike tour itself, I want to start with your Instagram page, which I understand kind of inspired this. It is called Picturing Mexican America. Tell me a little bit about how that began, how you started it.
Sure. Well, the Instagram feed, that page was an outgrowth of a larger project that I'm working on. I was on sabbatical from UCLA last year with a fellowship from the American Council of Learned Societies, and I was partnering with the Los Angeles Public Library to build an app, a mobile app that will use geodata to display images of 19th century Mexican Los Angeles to users. So that app is under development, and I'm learning that apps take a really long time to be built. But along the way, the researchers that I was working with, graduate students and other people working with me collecting data for the app, suggested that I do an Instagram feed. So the Instagram page is where we push out a lot of the archival material that we're collecting that will eventually show up in the app. So we have images, historical documents, maps, all kinds of things related to 19th century Mexican Los Angeles. And we try to make visible the Mexican past of Los Angeles that's been erased. And we're trying to do that in a fun way, not a didactic way. Hopefully we're succeeding.
And yeah, much more than a bike ride. And we've kind of seen a similar reckoning kind of sweep across the country, I feel like, to uncover the real history of America, one that, you know, is more complicated than maybe what we learn in school, what we learn in history class. I was reading an article where you're quoted as saying that it's more about being accurate than woke, which is kind of the term of 2020. What do you mean by that?
Something that is really important to understand is that there's always two sides to a story, but really you can have a historical narrative and you can say, this narrative is wrong, I'm going to tell this story and I'm going to right this wrong. But they're both stories, right? They're both manipulating some kind of real thing that happened in the past that we can never have complete access to because it's 2020 and we can't actually go back to 1871 and really experience the Chinese Massacre, which took place downtown, which we talk about on the bike ride. So I tell my students that what we're trying to do in our literature classes and also what we're trying to do in Picturing Mexican America is not necessarily say that one story is more right than the other, but to illuminate and bring to the fore the fact that there are multiple stories at any given time. There's multiple ways that we can be talking about things. And that's important to understand the levels of nuance. So I am not invested in making people more woke, but I am invested in making people understand that there's always layers of narrative on top of especially this space that we now know as Los Angeles.
And I think it's interesting on the website for the bike tour, you note that this is also, you know, there is this history as well that existed that may also have some racism in it. It's not about necessarily not having any of that and ignoring that part, just actually also commenting on what else also happened here. Is that fair?
Yes, and that's something that we say. I think it's on, you're referring to the page where users can go, people can go download the bike ride. We say, like, I think I'm quoting myself, we're not going to lie, right. 19th century Mexican Los Angeles, it wasn't a Benetton ad, right? Like it had its fair share of racist exploitation. I mean, in particular, the relationship between Mexican Californians and indigenous Californians is really fraught and very complicated.
So I love history. Can you give me some specific examples on this bike tour of what people might see along the way that they didn't even realize, you know, might have been wrong or inaccurate?
One of our very first stops is Fletcher Bowen Square, which is the site of two California State Historic Landmarks, and there's two plaques there announcing that space as the site of both the Bella Union Hotel and where the Los Angeles Star, LA's first paper of record, was published. But there's nothing there about who Fletcher Bowen was, which is interesting. He was LA's 35th mayor. He's the mayor who's credited for turning Los Angeles, really helping transform Los Angeles into a metropolitan leader among cities. But he was also an early and very vocal proponent of Japanese internment. So people walk past that square every day and probably don't think about who this man is. And yet this space, this very public space, is still named after him. The site itself, going back to the 19th century Mexican LA, talks about the Bella Union, talks about doesn't talk about the fact that the Bella Union was Pio Pico's headquarters when he was the last Mexican governor of California, when it was a Mexican territory. That history of the space is completely elided by the historical markers. And while there's a placard there that talks about the Los Angeles Star, that placard doesn't mention the fact that the Star had a Spanish language section called La Estrella. So it was a bilingual newspaper. LA's first newspaper was a bilingual newspaper. And then that newspaper, one of its early editors left the Star to found his own newspaper, El Clamor Público. That was Francisco Ramirez, one of the most important literary figures in Mexican-American Chicano literary history, just absent from that space. So that's one example. I don't know if we have time to share another.
Give me one quick one if you can. Go ahead.
Sure. I mentioned the Chinese Massacre of 1871, which is a stop on the tour. And this happened on a stretch of Los Angeles Street that's used to be called Calle de los Negros. It's now Los Angeles Street north of Arcadia downtown. And there's a placard in the pavement that describes the event that happened there. It was exactly what it sounds like. A mob pulled Chinese residents out of the area. It was the original Chinatown, and set fire to businesses and lynched people. It was a terrible, terrible event in Los Angeles' history. And that placard does note that it happened, but the wording on the placard really makes it sound like it was just a group of bad actors who did this, and the police tried to stop them, and they couldn't do anything. But there's plenty of contemporary accounts, both in the newspapers and memoirs, write about how the police just stood by and did nothing, and in some cases even armed people.
We only have a little bit of time left, but who is this bike ride for? I mean, I haven't been on a bike in years, I'll be honest. So how long is the route? Is it good for families? And where can people get more information if they are interested?
To download the route and the audio and the map, you can go to laexplorersclub.com/self-guided tours. So all the information is there. And this project really came about because Explorers Club reached out to us and asked if we would work with them to develop a ride. And the ride really is designed for people who cycle a lot. The route in its entirety is 15 miles, but there are certainly pieces that you can cut out and you can pick up a metro bike downtown and just do a little bit of it. It's very easy to navigate our audio and the map. And it is also entirely possible to walk this tour. A lot of the stops in downtown are very close together. So you can pick and choose and see what you want to see and listen as you go. Is not designed for children, although I do have a 14-year-old and 10-year-old, and we did walk the tour. But they're my children, so they're used to hearing me talk about lynchings and Native American slave markets, all of which you'll encounter on the tour. So I would say it's not family unfriendly, but parents, I would say maybe listen through a little bit of the audio first. And you can also just listen and paraphrase for your younger children. It is a fun way to experience the space of downtown in a really different way.
Marissa Lopez, a fascinating idea. Nothing like a good workout and a little education. So I appreciate your time here, and good luck with the project. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your interest.
Up next, if bike riding isn't your thing, what about a tropical vacation or a trip out of this world? A virtual reality experience in LA that can take you on a relaxing journey, no passport required, when Inside the Issues returns.